in Telangana state. So thanks a lot for this informal session. This is really great idea instead of having the PowerPoint presentation. So Professor Rao has put several important questions, and I think I will share some of my views on those questions. So first is, as he challenged or he has asked, why India cannot produce more Nobel laureates. At present, if you see the statistics, I think there are about 835 Nobel Prize given. Out of 835, in case of India, only 5 Indian citizens and 7 people of in the Indian origin. So total 12. And if you go back further, that well, who got in the science and technology, then you will be having very low. So now this is, well, of course, India has been doing great, so not that we need to continue to criticize ourselves. We can also take pride in many things. For instance, coming from the agriculture background, in 1960s or so, this was the time when India was on the edge of famine, and then we had the Green Revolution. At that time point, we used to grow only 12 million ton wheat, which was not enough to feed the population. And there were discussion around the world that India people will be dying, they will be starving, they will be having death from the starvation. But now, because of this research and contribution, now India is self-sufficient country in terms of food. Of course, we have the issue of the nutritional security. We are producing more than 100 million ton rice, 100 million ton wheat, and now we are the major exporter as well. So there are many bad things, or we can improve, but there are many good things as well that we can take pride and we can say that we are doing great job. But anyway, coming back to this thing that, well, why we cannot have the Nobel Prize not just based on the publication something. What I understand, you need to have something innovative. Unfortunately, in my opinion, Indian science, and majority of us are part of that one, that what happens, there are several factors which are associated. We can do good science, but there is still missing this capital I, innovation. And I think there are several factors associated. I can start from the family when child is growing. With due respect to the parents, but then there is always a protection environment. Mother always keep on saying, including my wife to our children, hey, don't do this thing, don't jump this thing, you will fall down, you will do this thing. So from the beginning, we are not having the risk-taking appetite. We want to do the one where we can feel comfortable. So from our childhood, and when I was working in Germany, when I see that kids that they are doing great and they are very free to do different things. So here, so what is happening in our system? We are very cautious. We don't want to take something innovative. We have the problem that we don't want to be seen as a failure. Now, so for instance, this was from the childhood. When you go to the schools, then there is a next thing is how many marks you will score, 55%, 85%. In this thing, children forget that, well, what exactly I need to understand, appreciate, read. They start to memorize the chapters. So again, basically you are killing this innovation skill from the child from the beginning. Anyway, many of us, many people, they do great job even in those situations. But then when you become even scientist or when you start to work, there's another thing. Many children, many young students, they don't go in the science job because the scientific job is not that lucrative as compared to other. There's different story that now things are changing. But nevertheless, even when we become scientists, we have the process to be the follower. We always have even with the funding agencies in India, even if you write some interesting research proposal, and if a reviewer or the expert has not done that one, they don't want to fund that project. They say, oh, this will be failure. This will not happen. Guys, that's fine. But at least give some chance. Of course, you should not fund that one where we know 100% failure, but you should take the risk of, you should be having this risk-taking approaches. Majority of the innovative things happen by that one. We know that, for instance, Thomas Edison, Einstein, and we have learned all these stories. The major discovery happened after series of the failures. We don't have these things. When we are doing some science, our bosses, even funding agency, they always monitor the performance of the scientist. Not that, well, what innovative you, which paper you publish, rather how many papers you publish. So all these things. So we need to address some of these issues. And then the next thing I will say, investment. If you see the developed countries, then the investment in science is quite high. For instance, right now, well, United States about 3% of the GDP, but if you see Korea, 4 to 5% of the GDP. And then what is happening in current scenario? First is lower investment, and sometimes our leader, administrator, they would like to see the output in the short term. That well, if I invest so many millions of the dollar, how much I can get in return. So basically, they are always seeing return on investment, which is good. But remember that now this is not that well, whatever you are investing today, you will get tomorrow. Of course, there will be applied value, industrial aspect, or different thing in few days, few years later, something. We cannot predict that well if we are having some basic science product today, when the result will come. If this is the case, when electricity was invented, right, we never thought, and this is not just because of electricity, many cumulative discoveries, but because of those new electrons, protons, whatever we read in the childhood, that now we have the possibility after so many years that we are having the entire world in our hands, so that we are connected with everybody, etc. We never thought. So I mean, these things happen. The basic science takes a lot of time. Now in the case of India, investment is less than 1% of the GDP, 0.8%. You see Korea is now big player in electronics media, for instance. They are having the Samsung phone, you have the cars, so they are different things. So what we can do in the case of India, that well, we need to enhance this percentage of the GDP. Third is, and this is little bit bureaucracy, and many of us have been victim of that one. So even you got the project, and we have this financial year. So first is, your project will take a lot of time to get funded. Second is, that even this is funded, the money when you will receive, this will be coming in several cases in December or January, they'll say, now financial year is closing, so finish it. How can you do that one? Other thing is that you always have this short-term scenario that, well, I would like to do this thing, and then even if you are having the project, you are having 3 years or 5-year project, what happened after that? Nobody cares. So I mean, these are the issues that now, if we can address some of these issues, then I think that we can really make great progress. And Professor Rao told, which is good, that our Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh has mentioned that 100 crore rupees for Nobel Prize. This is great. I would like to put the other way around. Can you have something like that one, that put or give the money 100 crore in advance or before? If you don't have the money, how can you invest in the research? If you invest in the research, you have the higher probability to get the Nobel Prizes. I'm not saying to whom you should give, but even if you are having the similar kind of infrastructure, etc., it's really difficult. As my colleague mentioned, that well, you cannot define a plan that well, by doing this thing I can get the Nobel Prize. But if you are having the system, society, infrastructure, support from your institution, support from the government, the different kind of thing, this we can do. Lastly, nowadays, for last few years, and this happens more in India, we don't invest much in the basic research. We are always seeing the applied aspect, and we are also having very, very minimal investment from the private sector, unlike the developed country. So what we can do, how we can encourage the private sector to come in a big way, so that we can have product oriented research, and of course the basic science, so that we can really develop the international public good, and which will be enhancing the visibility of India, and in a way our country will be recognized at greater level. So these are the work which I wanted to share. Thank you very much for your time.